every single human being has a guardian angel. Like if I was out on the street now going for a walk and somebody was walking towards me, I would see their guardian angel. And in seeing their guardian angel, I know they have a beautiful soul, that spark of light of God. Because one thing about your guardian angel is that it loves you unconditionally, and you're its number one, and it only has eyes for you, but it's the gatekeeper of your soul, and that's why it never leaves you. I've had the angels teach me everything. They have taught me every single thing I know. And just seeing the world through different eyes than everyone else, I suppose, is a gift that I can give to the world as well.
Welcome. We just had Lorna Byrne join us for our podcast. We're really excited to share this with you. We had Lorna on the channel. We released her film recently. If you haven't seen that, please check it out on our channel. Lorna is an international best-selling author, including her book, Angels in My Hair. And Lorna shares with us about her incredible relationship and connection to the other side. She has seen angels physically since she was a child growing up in Ireland. She also sees loved ones who have passed and died, and she sees them still day-to-day living. Lorna also shared with us about the Sanctuary, a beautiful piece of land and property in Ireland where she and others are helping to build a community center where people can have workshops, come spend time with Lorna, be in nature, and connect with the angels and God. In the film we put on our channel, she discussed her near-death experience, which she had never shared before with any audience. And it's a real pleasure and privilege to have her on the podcast today. So I hope you enjoy. Well, welcome so much, Lorna. It's such a treat to have you on our podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. I've been looking forward all week to doing this new podcast with you. So I'm really delighted and looking forward to whatever questions you wish to ask.
Some of our audience will know you and that you're intimately connected. You have a deep, profound relationship to God and the angels. But for anyone who hasn't seen your film on our channel or read your book, maybe you can just describe that about how you've seen angels your whole life and you've had this connection with God and the angels as a child and growing up.
Well, I remember when writing Angels in My Hair, I was terrified because not being able to read and being considered retarded from the time I was a little child. But from the moment I was born, I would always say to everyone, I've seen the angels. I didn't know they were angels. It was just at a particular time. Maybe I was 2.5, around that age. I was toddling about. And one day I was playing with my little brother in front of the fire. He was older than me. He would have looked about maybe 4 or 5. I'm always kind of not quite sure of the age. And we were playing with blocks my dad had given us. And our hands touched and all the blocks fell. And it was like his hand went into mine or mine went into his. And it was at that moment that the angels had said, I must keep it a secret, that they were angels. But they told me something else. They told me that my brother I was playing with was the soul that he had died before I was born. But you have to remember, I was a young child. And sometimes I would see him as a tiny infant in my mum's arms when she'd be asleep in the armchair in front of the fire. I've seen angels, and I suppose I see the world differently. I see so much, and I don't know why God chose me to see angels so physically and so much more as well that I don't really talk about very, very much. But just as time went by, the angels just kept reminding me, Lorna, keep it a secret, don't say anything. And even as a small child, when I would hear adults saying to my parents, oh, she's retarded, what are you going to do with her? And I always remember being so young and the doctor coming to the house where my mom had taken me to the doctor another day. And he's saying to my mom, she's retarded. You can do two things. You can put her into an institution, or you can do your best to cope with her, but she could become violent. That's the way they looked. But I thank God that I'm dyslexic. And you've got to remember, way back in Ireland at that time, they didn't know what that was. So if a child showed any signs of being slow in any way, they were branded. So I was branded very, very quickly. But I had great teachers. I've had the angels teaching me everything. I may not be able to read human language, but they have taught me every single thing I know. And just seeing the world through different eyes than everyone else, I suppose, is a gift that I can give to the world as well. And what would I say? Every single human being has a guardian angel. Like, if I was out on the street now going for a walk and somebody was walking towards me, I would see their guardian angel. And in seeing their guardian angel, I know they have a beautiful soul, that spark of light of God. Because one thing about your guardian angel is that it loves you unconditionally, and you're its number one, and it only has eyes for you, but it's the gatekeeper of your soul, and that's why it never leaves you. And I've had, what would I say, interviewers often say, do you mean the guardian angel never leaves you? And I said, yes. And they turned around and said, even in the bathroom? And I said, yes, your guardian angel is right in there with you. But angels don't look on us the way we look on ourselves. They see us as perfect and unique and beautiful. And your guardian angel's job is that when your human body dies, to bring your soul straight back to heaven. And I love that. And yet the guardian angel does its best to guide you through life. I always say, when you get a nagging voice in your head or feeling, whatever way it might be, not to do something or not to go somewhere, that's your guardian angel trying to help to guide you along in life as well.
I'm curious, Lorna, speaking about angels and like in a real time moment, because you're saying you see right now a bunch of angels in your room, maybe wondering if you could describe it a little, like who are they? Are they saying things? Like, I'm always so curious. Or is there too many to keep track of? It's just like a presence or something.
Well, I suppose maybe sometimes one angel will speak to me individually and I will hear it clearly. But at times they will speak, as I'd say, it's like a five-way system. If you can imagine that, like 5 telephone lines in that way. And of course, when Archangel Michael comes, or another particular angel, they will speak to me as you speak to me. I will hear them clearly as I hear you. And of course, I will see them physically as well, just like I see you on the screen here. I just have to smile at the angels, and they're just, how would I say, there's some teacher angels here and lots of unemployed angels, and angel hostess is here as well. How would I say, the teacher angels are just, how can I describe this? They're talking and saying, I have to kind of laugh at it because I can't say it in the funny way they're saying it, but it's like, Elliot will have a lot of work to do on editing all of this, and they're editing it all for yourself. Now, I know the two of you do it, but I have asked how other things will go for Elliot, and I'm just being told things will go great. Things will go great. and just those unemployed angels. I have sent a few of them off to yourselves, both of you. And I love unemployed angels because they're still pouring down from the heavens, like in the bucket falls. That's the way I always describe them. You get a bucket and there's a few angels and you turn it upside down. That's what God shows me. It's like this enormous bucket and they just come tumbling down like a ball. They're rolled up, and just before they get to the earth, it's like they straighten up. They're, how would I say, their wings unfold and disappear and they straighten up in that way. I would love to be able to see your guardian angel, but I can't because we're on screen. That very seldom happens. But if your guardian angel wanted to say something to me or you wanted to ask a question, sometimes the guardian angel will answer and I will hear, even if you're in a different part of the world. And to me, that's incredible. I can't explain everything because I'm still learning. I don't have all of the answers, but I only can teach and tell you what I know. I can't tell you what I don't know in that way. So angels are these beautiful beings that God created long, long ago. And I used to find it embarrassing, humanly, for the angels when I would have to say that they are creatures created by God long, long ago. Because the word creature, I felt was degrading, in that way. But the angels have said, I must say it exactly the way I was told. So the angels have us on pedestals, but we as human beings have the angels on pedestals. But the angels have all of us on way higher pedestals because every time an angel is in and around you and your guardian angel is, they're in the presence of God because of your soul. So imagine the incredible human being you can be.
It was a lot of fun and really special to sit down with you and film you for the video that's out. How was that experience, being filmed or watching the video, or you are sharing that some people that you've met on your workshops right now, because I think you're on tour in the US, have come up and shared that they've seen the video?
An awful lot of people at the workshops, came up and told me they saw the video and, about the near-death experience and everything. And they were so excited about it and they found it very moving. And they said they got more understanding themselves, and I suppose as well, when I done it with yourselves, or any time or even now, I'm always a little bit afraid, but I remember being in the room, your front room, and just watching all of the angels. They just crowded into the room. And sometimes when I'd look at the cameraman, there'd be another angel there with their camera, or I looked over at Elliot or yourself, and I always remember, I would always be nervous. Like, I always get nervous, but it's like that nervousness is taken away and I calm down in that way and I just enjoy it. I just go with the flow. I love questions, especially at times when it's a new question, something I haven't been asked before, because I get asked a lot of the same thing, and I found that day, doing that podcast with both of you, like there was so much new things you were talking about, new things you were asking, and I loved it.
We titled the video, there's some words there of something that you've shared in that interview and with Jesse and I and other times, which is around what you say, God often tells you, which many are called and few are chosen, and of those few say yes, or something like that. And, we've gotten some comments on the video of people being a little confused by that phrase. And I know it technically goes back to the Bible, but I would be curious to hear any other thoughts around that.
I suppose, even as a child, when God was showing me things and the angels teaching me of things that were to happen, they were one words that God always used. Many are called, few are chosen, and very few of those few that are chosen say yes. And I know God was referring to myself for help to do what God wants me to do. It's like the sanctuary. It's like, even coming to the US to remind the people in America, that you are the chosen race. You are the new race. And to talk about, peace and love in that way. And only because some people have said yes, to giving us a helping hand. Because you have to remember, I don't have money myself, so don't have means myself. Because to me, I know you can't, when you die physically, you can't take any of that with you to heaven, so you have to, share it with the world, help others in whatever way you possibly can. For the few that, said yes, I'm so grateful because, we wouldn't have the sanctuary. And even for yourselves, when you said yes, we wouldn't have either, And it's just, for me, I'm still in shock just watching so much unfold. And yet there is so much more that God has said that's to happen. And I'm still praying and saying to God, and the angels, well, you better get another few to say yes, in that way that can play a big part. Because one thing God and the angels always taught me, you give with a pure heart and you expect nothing in return. And I'm afraid that's the way it has to be for those that give. And, they have to give with a pure heart and expect nothing in return. And I'm just very grateful because the sanctuary wouldn't exist. And yet God showed it to me when I was a child, even when I was a teenager. And even, that time when Archangel Michael stood at the pillars, I was always, what would you say, in denial in one sense. And this room is full of angels now, so they're distracting me. At times I'm looking in another direction. Because, the world, we need love in the world. It's, God has me talking about the gifts that we are all yearning for, the ones that you can't go into a supermarket and buy, and your soul has all of those gifts. And that's love and compassion and hope and peace and empathy. There's just so many of them. And the world is yearning for all of them in that way. And people, I'm finding, regardless of their faith or what religion they belong to, they come and listen and they too ask questions. And that's something that I find really incredible. I thank God every day that it's not just Catholics, because I was brought up a Catholic, that people from different faiths, different religions come and they listen. And, they even come up for the blessing. And to me, that's astonishing because, I always remember one imam and another man saying, we're not allowed to receive a blessing from another faith. And yet they came up to receive the blessing. And I think we just all have to get together, become one. That's what I'm always saying about America. You're all Americans and I love you and I don't care what your differences are. And the same in Europe. We we have to reach out to each other in kindness and love to change for the better, to make this world like that little glimpse of heaven, that intertwining of the body and soul. I'd say it's like a plait in that way for all of the incredible futures God has shown me. And I have only named off a few and gave a little of them in the books I have written. And again, many are called, few are chosen, and very few of those few say yes. So I'm just hoping that more of those few will say yes and say, Lorna, what can we do? What do you need? And give it with a pure heart and expect nothing in return. I just love those words that God has used. And you have to remember, I'm dyslexic, severely dyslexic. So the only time when I would hear would be the priest reading the Bible, or sometimes when I went to a prayer group with Joe when he was still alive, somebody might read something out of the Bible. And I always loved the words, that I would hear, especially when it was in kindness and love in that way. So I'm just an ordinary person. Elliot, I'm just an ordinary person, and I know I clapped my hands that time. I always say I'm no different than anyone else, but when I wrote the first book, Angels in My Hair, and told the world about their guardian angel and their soul, and so much more, just hearing back from all ages across the world and how it gave them hope and changed their life for the better. That's what it's about. It's not about, standing on a pedestal and say, look how great I am. It's not about that at all. That's why I always say to everyone, it's not about me, it's about you. I'm nothing. You are something. You're the most important. And I just love every human being in the world, and I love nature because the angels taught me everything out in nature. And I thank God for the sanctuary in Ireland, and I know we need lots more help. And, it's a blessed, holy place, and it's just so full of peace. And, just what would I say? The angels are saying, come on, Lorna, express more. And I'm very hard. I find it hard to express more, but I am overwhelmed, and I'm just looking forward to all of the groups from all around the world coming, to learn how to connect spiritually, because we need to reach into our souls and, be better. And we can be better. And I know we're planning to, do lots of workshops and have other teachers coming in, other great people at different times. But God has plans. This is the thing, like God has even shown me a school there, and children come from all over the world, teenagers come from all over the world to stay for a while. And I love the way God has shown me, how would I explain this? I always smile when I think of it, is, those from, what would you say, executives? I can't pronounce the word properly. Yeah, and CEOs and even those that are higher up that people don't know, come and they're handed a pair of wellies. God showed me them coming in suits, and I was smiling and I was saying, God, but they don't need to wear suits. They need, jeans, ordinary clothes, not to be dressed up like that. And just God showed me myself handing them a pair of wellies and telling them, come on, you have to come with me and help me. And it's just so wonderful when you see, already people are coming, and especially from America, and we were harvesting potatoes, and just watching the excitement of, getting clay on your hands and finding potatoes and knowing that you're going to have those potatoes for your dinner, and thanking God and the earth, thanking nature and connecting to your food, because it's going to nourish you. It was just very exciting to watch these women and men being overwhelmed. That's the only way I can explain that. And just watching the angels all around them that day. It's just a little story I share. But yeah, the sanctuary, lots is to happen there, and lots that is even unknown to me even. And I know that in 300 years' time and more, it'll still be there. It'll still be an anchor for the world. But we do need those that God is calling. Many are called, few are chosen, and very few of those few that are chosen say yes. And that's the only way I can explain those words, because God referred them to myself and to those to come to help, just like yourselves. So thank you.
Last clarifying question on that, Lorna, is again, people were commenting, and because doesn't it seem like we're all chosen? It seems strange that many are called, but few are chosen seems so particular.
I think God was referring to the sanctuary and what's to happen, because it's not just a sanctuary. It's like it'll be the main one, but it'll spread through the world. It's only the beginning. So I know we're all called and we're all chosen, and we all have a part to play. Even the people that come to the workshops, they have a huge part to play, and to whatever may be happening there in that way. But I can't change the words God used. But I know God was using those words to myself, because I can't read or anything. Like, I couldn't set this up, or go into an email and whatever one has to do in that way, because I wouldn't recognize anything. So at times it is hard to understand, but I know God is referring those words to what is to happen for the future. And I do believe that in the end, we will all change spiritually. That intertwining will all happen. We'll all say yes, regardless of our beliefs, or our hopes, or, in the sense, maybe regardless of what way we have been condemned, not to look on ourselves as an incredible human being that has a soul, and allowing that soul to intertwine with the human body. I know that is all part of evolution, and this is all just the beginning. None of this that I'm saying to you now are my words. They are God's words. Or if you want to call God, Allah, or you want to call God Jesus, or you want to call God the creator, or you want to call God, the universe. It's, how would I say, it's more than the beginning of life, and we're all part of it. So in a sense, we are all playing a part, but it's like, I suppose the world, in one sense, we have become so materialistic in some of us in some ways, and we only want to keep those material things for ourselves, and for those material things, to grow and not to share, and only to share in the sense of, if I get, what would you say, credit for it, or if I get, look at what I have given, look what I have done. That's what God means as well, giving with a pure heart and expecting nothing in return in that way. And I hope I'm not being too hard on anyone, but I know God and the angels will help people to understand as time goes on. We're all special. And again, that's why I say it's not about me, it's about you.
So while we're still talking about the sanctuary, I was wondering if you could explain just a little bit about some of the audience might not know exactly what you mean when you refer to the sanctuary. So it's a beautiful big piece of land in Ireland. It has a garden. There's an old house. Do you want to describe a little bit about what it looks like and what you think will happen there?
I find it very hard to describe, and even when my son asks and everything has been put together, I always say, remember, it's all in God's hands. This is what the Creator is doing. It's not ourselves, and there's so much more to come. I just always remember Archangel Michael, standing at those gates, and that story of, Joe was alive then, and I just thought God was crazy. No way could I move into that little house that I saw the far side of the gate, because I knew Joe, even at that time, his health was going down all of the time. But then years passed, and my children and a stranger, who was a stranger at first, he decided, and his wife, to give us a helping hand, and came to my home, the old farmhouse, beautiful old farmhouse, and I love it. And he just said, what can we do for you? We could build on, an extension onto the farmhouse, and you could have people come, and, he had loads of plans that way. And I just smiled, because one thing that God and the angels always said, it was in Thomastown. And then when we applied for planning permission, it was all turned down. So it wasn't the farmhouse. And I was saying to God, well, what are you up to? You got me to move down here. I'm down here. I'm in Thomastown. I'm where you said I am to be. And that part was, I'm still human, so it can be, confusing at times, but I had to trust and have faith. And my son and another lady were looking for any place that I could, that we could get really reasonable, where I could do a workshop, so people could come. And the young woman found online a property that was for sale, and for fun, because she's great spirit, and you know what I mean, for fun, she sent it to my son. And seemingly he laughed at her and said, well, we don't have 2 pennies. That's impossible. But then he went and he sent it to me. And, he said, Mom, just click on that line. He was talking to me, we were FaceTiming. So I clicked on the line, and I got a terrible shock when I saw the 2 pillars and the gate. And the thing is, it is in Thomastown. Which is mind-blowing as well, in that way. And just seeing as the cameras went down this drive, that was overgrown, everything, and seeing this incredible big house, and an incredible forest, and a walled garden, but now everything was in bits. Even the house was literally in bits. And seemingly, if the house had been neglected for another year, all the 7 roofs would have fallen in. So there would have been no hope in that way. But there was a river, and there was a lake, a small little lake that had filled up with sediment. So there was just a trickle of water running through it. But my son he just said to me, Mom, do you think I should send this to the husband and wife that were offering to build on to the old farmhouse? And I said, yes. And he sent it with kind of hesitation and all of that. But this couple are the ones that bought the sanctuary and gave it, and that's what God wanted. And I suppose that, again, many are called and few are chosen, and very few of those few say yes. But they said yes. And they said yes, all because of Angels in My Hair, the book. That's a real long story, but the book had a huge effect on their family. It worked miracles, something happened, and that was the reason. And I suppose all over the world that is still happening. And that's why we have the sanctuary, because of these two people. And then, things just started to happen, and they have helped in a huge way that the big old house is almost ready, but it has cost a mint, huge money because it was so derelict. But we have cleared the forest, and you should see all the young trees coming up, and some of the trees are 500 years old, some of them are even older, and we've brought the lake, we've taken all that silt out of the lake, and we have wildlife on the lake, and fish in it as well. And just to see the garden, like a big bulldozer had to go in to kind of make a path, because there was old apple trees in there and you couldn't see the apple trees. It was so overgrown, and they're just beautiful apples.
And Lorna, when does the sanctuary open to the public? And is it for guests around the world to come and do retreats there?
Yes, it is for guests to come and do retreats and learn to, connect spiritually. I always say it's for everyone. And I do lots more than what is just advertised, on the website. So I know it'll be, I think, fully opened. We're still hoping that someone else will give, because we've got planning permission through for 24 bedrooms, to one side of the big old house. But we still have to wait for someone, again, to give with a pure heart and expect nothing in return. In that way for those, because we'd love to be able to accommodate everyone that comes, because it'll have to pay for its own keep as well. But it's just when God shows me what happens, people, even the few people that are coming at the moment, but they can't go into the big house. It's just such a miracle to see the impact on their lives in such a positive way. And even young people, 14-year-olds, 19-year-olds, turning around and saying, it's giving them purpose. It's giving them meaning to life. It's giving them understanding, because young people and even older people now need that today, because the world is changing in so many ways. So I thank God for, how would I say, opening the gates in that way, for everyone. So we just have to wait and watch what way God is going to unfold all of this, because you have to remember, sanctuary is going to be still there in 300 years. It's like the cornerstone in that way. It's the first, and I don't even understand what God means by the first. And I know there will be others in different parts of the world, but it's like the first is like, the beacon of light, the beacon of hope. And I can't even quite explain that. It's like that beacon of light, that beacon of hope, that love. It's like it's going to radiate out across the world. Sometimes I say, I don't know what God is up to, because I'm dyslexic. I can't read. Don't ask me to go down the road and draw out a map and ask me to follow it. I can't. You have to tell me, you pass 3 turns and then you take a right. But that is even very difficult for me. So you can imagine God saying to me, this is the way you're to go. So I always just take those stepping stones. And then if God says turn left or right, I just turn left or right. I don't ask a load of questions. I just have the faith for everything to unfold. But I know the world, mankind, has to play their part. You have to play your part because I can't do it all on my own.
Yeah. And also, Lorna, some of our audience might not know, you see angels and communicate and see them physically, but you also can see souls of loved ones and people who have passed. And I remember when Elliot and I visited you in Ireland, you saw our mother who had passed in 2020. And maybe you could share a little bit about that, seeing also souls of loved ones.
Yeah, ever since I was a small child, I have seen souls of loved ones. Sometimes I might have been looking out the window and people passing by or a neighbour, and I might see the soul of a loved one that had passed away, and I had never met them. I didn't know them as such. And they would just turn and look at me and sometimes just say, "Oh, I'm the grandfather. I was her dad. I was her uncle," but not always. A lot of times they would just turn and look in my direction. But the one thing about the soul of a loved one that has passed, I'm always overwhelmed when I see the love that that soul is giving to the human being, to that either child or son or daughter or husband or wife. It's, again, undescribable. It's like they reach out and touch the human being, and they're helping them to get through the grief, because grief is never ending in one sense, and just like your mom, every time I have seen her, she's a young woman, full of life. She's not showing herself as, someone that couldn't be full of life in the way that she was before her human body died. She was showing what she was like, as a young woman, just full of energy, and I know she does be with you and around you, and is probably there with you now because you have mentioned her. That's one thing about the souls of our loved ones is, when they cross our mind, they're there. And again, it's your guardian angel that would often call them in to give you a helping hand, because we respond much easier to a soul of a loved one. Because, the way sometimes somebody might say, "Oh, I can smell them. I can feel their presence today." Or someone opens a drawer after maybe 10 years and finds something in the drawer that they never knew was there, and it reminds them of their loved one. That's a message being given as well. And a loved one, they help to guide us as well, help to cheer us up, help us to feel much better within ourselves. But grieving, it is hard, I know, because I still grieve for Joe, and yet I have seen him many times, at my daughter's Holy Communion, at my daughter's wedding. He's there. He's not dead, he's alive. And that's something we find really hard to believe, because I see them physically, and I know you don't, but you do feel their presence at different times. You feel their touch, or suddenly your heart is moved, or something even someone else says reminds you of your mom, in that way. And it really is hard, because if you really loved someone, that loved one is kind of, how would I say, here in your chest. You'd feel a coldness, that loss, that pain, and no one can heal that. it heals to a certain amount that you can live life, but your loved one is always in your heart. You often think of them out of the blue, and you call on them. And I do love the thing about a soul of a loved one is that they can intercede for us, to get more help. And I don't think that we call on our loved ones enough in that way. And we should. And I always thank your mom for helping both of you to even get closer together and to work together and to, get through the struggles of life, but to enjoy and for many blessings to come and happiness as well. And I know she's always working with you, both of you. So it's like my little brother, Christopher. He was a soul, and yet he played with me, with the blocks and other things. Like I'm only telling you a little, because he has come into my life on many occasions. Many stories I haven't written at all. But always remember, no matter how much of a loss you're feeling about a loved one, about someone who has died, they're not dead. It's only their human body that has died. They're very much alive. And they're always there to give you a helping hand. And I know one of the stories I have in the book, it's my son, his friend had died. And, I tell part of the story in the book of him saying, he told me I could feel his presence there. And he told me to tell Dad to leave, and they left. And when he was out in the street with his dad, it was like, come on, Dad, let's move faster, because he could feel his friend telling him and hearing the voice, run, and what was happening back where they were had nothing to do with them. But the soul of Christopher's friend was giving guidance to my son and pushing him forward to stay safe in that way. And the souls of loved ones, they help us so many times, but we are afraid to acknowledge it. I know both of you acknowledge it, but there's millions of people out there that are afraid even to say they believe in God, or they believe in their guardian angel, or that they believe in, the soul of their loved one, has been in and around them today, giving them courage and help. And I don't understand why we should deny the soul of a loved one, or deny our guardian angel or any angel, or even deny God. Why are we afraid? That's a question I often ask people. Why are you afraid?
I have a question, Lorna. So a lot of audience members that watched your film wrote comments, and quite a few of them asked about Jesus. And I believe a lot of them are Christians, some maybe not Christians, but we didn't ask you specifically about Jesus for the film. But I was curious if you wanted to share a little bit, like your interactions with him, or anything of who he is or was.
Yes, I love your question. Don't you know Jesus is God? Don't you know Jesus is the Father? Don't you know Jesus is Allah? Jesus is God. And in one of my books, I give a little insight that God had asked me to give, and that is, out of God walks Jesus the Son, and out of God walks the Holy Spirit. You have to remember, and out of God walks Allah, because it's all God, it's one God. So that was something that I was very afraid of. Not being able to read or write was, kind of, God, what are you asking me to do? Like, I can't do this. I'll be ridiculed and laughed at. I'm already considered retarded, and you're asking me to write a book. And the one thing that really concerned me was, what am I going to call you? Am I going to call you Jesus? Am I going to call you the Father? Am I going to call you the Holy Spirit? Am I going to call you the Almighty One? Like, I was naming off loads of names, even Allah. And I know the Jewish name, I can never pronounce it. I even named that one off, And the incredible thing was that God just looked at me and he just said, Lorna, what do you call me? And I was just so surprised when God said that I kind of, changed my posture and just said, God, of course. Why would God ask me that question? And the one thing that God said, by using the word God, it's universal for all faiths and none. So when I talk of God, I'm talking of Jesus. I'm talking of the Holy Spirit. I'm even talking of Allah. Like, God has so many names, and yet we are so focused sometimes on just using Jesus. But many times in our prayers and when we are calling out for help, we call God by other names and we don't even notice.
And I'm questioning, it may be a personal one, but you've seen Archangel Michael and others. Have you ever seen Jesus or talked to him as an individual soul?
Yes, of course. Like, how would I say it? I'm so surprised by your question. Have you ever? Like, how could you imagine? I have not. Every time I talk about God, it's Jesus. Even in God's library, it's Jesus. Um, so I'm actually quite surprised by your question in that way. But one thing that Jesus, God has always taught me is to be compassionate and loving and not to judge, never to judge anyone in that way. You have to remember this is all normal to me, because God, Jesus, and all of the angels have been my teachers. I haven't been educated in a university, because I can't read. Like, even today, I go really by symbols I see to know that a particular symbol means, the way out. But if you change those symbols, I'd be looking around in circles, because as a young teenager, I told the angels to stop helping me that way, that I have to learn for myself. And to this day, I wish I never said that, because it would be much easier for me. But yeah, I'm very surprised when you ask that question, because I just say to myself, well, people should know that God is Jesus. They should know. Like, I've had, even priests and nuns and rabbis and all the other different faiths come up and ask me questions. And sometimes I would be so surprised with what they're asking me, because they're the heads of different faiths, different religions. And one question they do ask, and is God real, Lorna? Is Jesus real? Is Allah real? It depends on what faith they're from. And I'm just looking at them astonished. Of course God is real. I'd be astonished of them asking that question. They should know better.
Yeah, I think, and I don't know if it's me or more people share this, but I guess I get locked into thinking of Jesus as, I know Jesus is the Son and God and the Holy Spirit, but I always think of him as an individual, part human, part Son of God, who came to earth and crucified, resurrected. So I fixate on him as a third entity, but I hear you saying Jesus is literally God the Father. They're interchangeable. So that's helpful to hear.
Yeah, well, I hope that's helpful. Like I've I've even had imams and all of that ask me, and ministers, how come in the Catholic faith there's three gods? I don't know if you ever heard any of them say that to you, but they have said it to me. How come there's three gods in the Catholic faith? And I would look at them and say, what do you mean? And they would say the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And I'd have to explain to them that all of those are God. It's one God, in that way. And they get it after a while that it is only one God. You're talking of Jesus, you're talking of the Father. And I would tell them, God is Allah. We just give God all different names because, in a sense, many religions came up at different times and, in one way, claiming God for their own. So gave God another name in that way. But I love where most religions always say to me, Lorna, we love Jesus. And I would ask them why. And they would say, because he showed compassion and love. And I would love that compassion and love to come back into the world. We need it. And I know it's sad today that the Catholic Church has split in so many ways over negative things, horrific negative things that have happened within it. But you always have to remember those same negative things that have been horrific in the Catholic Church have happened in other faiths as well. So we have to have love and compassion and always remember that, I always say, use a simple example. You have a basket of apples, or a bowl of apples, and you're bound to find a bad one in the middle. But you have to have love and compassion even for that bad one, because that's what Jesus was about. Having that love, that compassion, that understanding.
Well, that's so wonderful, Lorna. And I'm curious, people make comments under these films and videos, and we're just tracking in my own life, thinking about the state of the world. And a lot of people have fear and there's uncertainty about all the things from politics, climate change, AI, technology. And you've written little bits in your different books and even wild stuff like seeing into the future or, the ways. Humanity can go, and I know you've talked about that humanity can choose, we can go in certain directions, but I'm curious if you could share a little bit about how you see where we are as a planet and as a society today and how we can make the right decisions moving forward.
Well, I believe we can make the right decisions. I know we're on the crossroad and I know we're, in a sense, all in battle, not just American people and the government here in America, but even in Europe through the whole world. And we have to make the right decisions now. We really need to. And that's where, in a sense, we have to stop condemning each other and hating each other and kind of looking on each other's differences as negative. And even the leaders of the world really have to change too. They have to have that compassion and love for the people of the world, because I know if they don't, the people of the world will rebel and rebel more than what they are now at the moment. And I know we have AI, and I have written about, the throwback. That's what I call the young man, the throwback, in the future. And that's one thing within science and technology. We can't overstep that boundary. We have to be careful we don't in that way. So I pray to God that we don't overstep it. I think it's wonderful that we're moving forward in that area, but we have to look back at our planet. We can't keep on killing it and taking from it, because no matter how much we move forward with technology, we'll all the time be behind. Our planet will be ahead of us in that way. So we have to really take care of nature. And we already, even though we're in denial, we're already kind of saying, we're seeing the evidence of climate change, but yet we're denying it. I hear countries, and even my own country, saying, oh, then 2030, we'll have it sorted out. 2030 is a bit late. We're going to make, if we don't work harder at it now, we will make life really hard for everyone, literally everyone. And we need nature, because our beautiful planet, that angel that I call Mother Earth, that's in the center of the planet, that incredible angel, is doing everything to keep our planet together, to keep us alive. And yes, we're kind of, what would you say, ignoring that. Like when you see our seas full of pollution, all the plastic, and science has taken some fish out from deep down, and they're finding that some of those fish have, plastic particles, some of their flesh is plastic because they've been eating these tiny little things of plastic. And I know in science, they're all the time wondering, well, is a child going to be born in the future with, say, a plastic finger? We'll just use a little example like that, So we've got to, in a sense, clean our planet up and stop. We've got to go back to the old-fashioned way, and I hate saying that, in that sense that, no more chemicals, because we're killing all of nature within the soil. And if we keep doing that, how can nature within the soil give us food? There's so many things, but yet I see that hope there. I know we can do it. God wouldn't have me in the world now, if we couldn't do it. So I'm working really hard to give all the messages out to the world. I know at the moment I'm working on 3 books, and I'm working on a book with a scientist, but I keep telling God, I need an island where I can go and hide and be on my own, not another human being, only nature. And, and put stuff on tape, take a rest, put stuff on tape in that way, and for the sanctuary in Ireland, in Kilfane, in Thomastown, to grow the way God wants it to grow. It's like we will, in a sense, how would I say, change spiritually? Like, we use the word spiritual, and it is overwhelming, and it's powerful. and it is changing ourselves humanly and allowing our soul to come forward and realize that we are a super type of human being that has intertwined. And I know we can do it because that's one of the futures I have been shown, is where we make this planet like a little glimpse of heaven. But that little glimpse of heaven is enormous. It's incredible. Like, I just know we can do it. And you're playing a part. Everyone out there is playing a part. Even those that we might see that seem to be careless and are maybe pouring stuff into a river or using chemicals or a big, I don't know what you call them, business company, just putting money in the front. That money is, wealth is about everything. But wealth is not about everything, because we have to save our beautiful planet in order to save ourselves. It's kind of, come on, wake up, be that wonderful human being that I know you all can be, and allow the intertwining to happen, and it's like where I see children do incredible things, and then I see children where they turn around and they're looking at pictures of nature, and it's like they're living in a bubble, and they're looking out and they're asking, why did you and I allow our planet to die? That all of nature is gone. Imagine no more butterflies and no more bees or no more birds or no more wild little creatures you see out in the fields or in your garden that we complain and give out about.
Lorna, sorry to interrupt because I know we're approaching the end of time, but I have one more question for you on this topic, which is, you talk about how we can intertwine our soul and our bodies. Maybe you could share a little bit about what that means or looks like, or how can people practice that if that's what we should do?
It's actually very, very hard to explain. It is of the soul coming forward, and at times I just see it on someone. It comes forward maybe about that much, that space between my hands, and it starts to intertwine, and that's where a person has, how would I say, opened up spiritually to the impossible and trying to find a way to explain. And that's what I'm trying to teach people, to make that connection to nature and to another human being as well, and not to have hate in your heart. But I think if you become aware of your soul and conscious that you're not just a human being, that you're more than a human being, and that you have a soul and you have a guardian angel, and that God is real, the Creator is real, I think that is a beginning. And it's like every time maybe somebody lashes out at you, step back and take a breath. This is what I'm telling everybody these days. Step back and take a breath, and don't lash back. Don't lash back in hate and anger. And we have an awful lot of lashing back in hate and anger, even here in America. Like, one thing I couldn't understand was I was on a train, a 10-hour journey, and my family and myself went to the cabin to have something to eat. And my family sat at one table, but there wasn't room for myself. But there was another table, and there was an African American sitting at that table. And I just said to this lovely man, because I could see his guardian angel, I just said to him, would it be okay if you could share the table with me, that I could sit here too and have my food? And what happened was, he looked at my son and he said, oh, you'll have to ask him. I didn't understand that. But it's like as if there's such a divide between American people, and you're all American. And my son kind of said, yeah, Mom, sit there, like, because I'm Irish. So we wouldn't, to us, someone asked, can they share a table? We'd say yes, and we wouldn't care less. Where they're from or who they are or anything like that. And I know I did get talking to him later on, but he was very nervous and I couldn't figure out, but the angels were saying to me it's because of the division in America between American people, and he's afraid. And I said, what's he afraid of? And he said, he's afraid of you. And I said, but why? And I was being told, and I haven't shared this part before, for his life. And to see that division in American people, to me, just broke my heart, And I was told to say some words to him at one stage, and I said to him, thank you very much for sharing your table. It has been a great pleasure, and I've really enjoyed sitting here with you. And I said, caring and sharing is just one of the wonderful gifts we can give each other, And he gave a little smile because you could see how hesitant he was. He didn't know what to say. But when he got up to leave the table, after an hour or so, he said, I have to try to be more caring and to share. And that was lovely to hear from him. But to see that division, and that's what I have seen in America this time, and I know Americans you have been gathered from all over the world by the American Gathering Angels. I wasn't. I often give out to God about that, but yet he keeps sending me over. But I'm not to stay as full-time. I'm just to come to talk and to pass on the messages that are being given. But I know the American people can do it because, and I know that in Europe they hate me saying this, but you have been gathered from all over the world. Just think about that. And when you came to America, no matter whether it was a generation ago or 2 generations ago or 10 generations ago, there was already Americans there, and that was the native people. And you're all Americans, and I wish you would just all come together as one. No more hate, no more differences. Sharing is caring. That's all I will say. And I love you all. I love you all.
Love you too, Lorna. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to talk with us and join us on this podcast. It's always such a treat and a pleasure to talk with you. We're so grateful to know you on a personal level and to be able to have your film on our channel and this podcast, because just think so many people get so much. It really nurtures and nourishes their faith that there is a God, there are angels, that we are loved, that there's so much more to this world and to life than they might think. And